The following video is reposted on all my social media channels as a public service with the permission of the creator, Wil Kinesche. Wil and I have corroborated to expose the despicable crime of child sex trafficking. Due to problems on my end which are out of my control, we haven't been on together for a week or so. However, expect another blockbuster video from us very shortly. A mass arrest of deep state actors, I feel, is imminent, given recent developments. We are about to be pleasantly surprised.
Their Habersham County home.
Fox Eye's Justin Gray is here now with more. Justin?
Yeah, Russ, former State Senator Nancy Schaefer was well known for championing conservative causes. Tonight, GBI crime scene investigators are at her Northeast Georgia home. They're searching for clues that might tell them what led to the sudden and violent deaths of Miss Schaefer and her husband.
I ask that you please rise with me for a moment of silence.
The announcement was made around 7:30 this evening on the floor of the Georgia General Assembly. The bodies of former State Senator Nancy Schaefer and her husband Bruce were found today at their Habersham County home. Investigators say both had been shot.
Developing right now, Arkansas State Police are investigating the death of a former state senator. Linda Collins Smith was found dead at her home last night in Randolph County. That's in northeast Arkansas. Investigators say it appeared she had been shot and they don't believe it was suicide. However, they are not releasing any other details. A judge has sealed the documents and statements obtained by police during the investigation. Collins Smith was first elected to the Arkansas State Senate as a Republican back in 2014, and she was defeated in last year's.
A former lawmaker found dead. Former Senator Jonathan Nichols was found shot inside his Norman home. News 4's Lily Zhang is just back from Norman with the details. Lily.
Well, Jolene, the former senator was known in many circles, from the Senate to OU. We spoke with colleagues who knew him best.
Always had a smile, always had great stories to tell, and was never shy to tell those stories.
This is how Representative Jacob Rosecrans will remember Jonathan Nichols. The former senator was found dead Wednesday night in his Norman home. Police say he died after an apparent gunshot.
This individual was a public servant in the Norman community, served not only with the district attorney's office, but also as a legislator.
And news of his death coming as a shock for Oklahoma lawmakers. Nichols, 53 years old, served in the state Senate for 12 years. He was succeeded by Senator Rob Stanridge, who described him as the most brilliant political legal mind in the Oklahoma state legislature.
Breaking news.
A former Arkansas state senator is dead tonight. Linda Collins Smith, who represented District 19 from 2014 to 2018, was reportedly found dead in her Randolph County home, that's in northeast Arkansas, from a gunshot wound. That information coming from her former press secretary, who also says her death is being investigated as a murder. Now, we don't have a lot of information right now, including any possible suspects.
Tonight, the Republican Party of Arkansas posting into its Facebook page regarding to Collins Smith, saying in part she was a passionate voice for her people and a close member of our Republican family. We're praying for her loved ones during this very difficult time.
And of course, we'll have much more about this story tomorrow on your 5 News This Morning.
The Wil Kinesche Show, in search for truth and justice, with yours truly, Wil Kinesche. And the reports of the 3 videos you just saw were news reports of 3 state senators in 3 states that were murdered because of the fact they were big-time opponents, opposition and bringing out the corruption in the foster care system. The one that I'm going to focus the most on is Linda Collins Smith out of Arkansas, who was murdered. She was investigating the 2 sets of books that was being ran, trying to find out and explain where the $27 million, which ultimately all the players were put in place as far as the organizations, the judges, the congressmen, and the lobbyists, and the information was funneled through a bogus corporation into the Clinton Foundation. And what everybody wants to hear, the more than 20 arrests that were made out in Arkansas for fraud, misappropriation of funds, bribery, murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and murder for hire, due to this fraudulent setup of all these millions of dollars through the state of Arkansas foster care CPS system. If you stay tuned to the end, I will tell you how many documents that they found that is being investigated by over 200 FBI agents in multiple states and out of multiple FBI offices in those states. From this investigation, there were so many of them, how they had to transport these documents, and they were all related to the Clinton Foundation. And that's where we'll end up, is tying all this into the Clinton Foundation. So hang on, folks, because we have another good one for you. Thank you for taking your valuable time to watch my channel. If you would, like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification button after you hit the subscription. So therefore, when I put more shows out, you'll get notifications. I want to thank each and every one of you for your support and the comments that you've been leaving below. So don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button. So the video clips that you saw were 3 state senators in 3 various states over a course of years, and they were strong proponents giving opposition to the foster care system, investigating and exposing the corruption through the foster care system. So the first senator that you saw was Nancy Schaefer. She was down in Atlanta. She literally went around the world speaking on the corruption in the foster care system of the United States, bringing out the fact that foster care, of their unlimited power that they have to be able to come in and take a child out of a home and put them into the foster care system. However, she goes on further to talk about where she had, which is a video clip I'm going to play for you in just a second, where she has found out and exposed that there are all these people in the system relying on this $40+ billion a year that is put into the foster care system through the United States from a law that was put on the books back in the 1970s. So I'm going to play that video clip for you. Then after that, I'm going to play one where it profiles a Oklahoma state senator that was arrested and convicted for her having sex with a young boy. That ties us into the senator out in Oklahoma, Jonathan Nichols. And after you watch that particular video clip, I'll get into more detail of what he was up to, what he was doing, and why I suspect he was also murdered. And then finally, I'm going to get into the feature senator that was murdered, Linda Collins Smith in Arkansas. And they put the players into place from a corrupt corporation, got a bogus corporation. And these players that they put into place were the CEOs and the executives, all the way down to the bookkeepers. Then they went and got lobbyists to lobby the Congress of the state. They ended up recruiting some state senators and congressmen and judges, and this is how they were able to funnel the $27 million through putting in 2 sets of books. We'll get into that in more detail, and I will mention this again, but Linda Collins Smith's murder has been sealed, and a gag order has been put in place by a 3rd District Court federal judge. So they're trying to hide something on that. So here's a couple video clips, and we'll talk more about it when they're done.
Well, my name is Nancy Schaefer, and I'm from the state of Georgia in the United States. And I'm with you on the unlimited power of Child Protective Services. I served in the Georgia State Senate, and after 4 years of viewing the ruthless and unsparing actions of Child Protective Services, also called CPS, which I will use tonight, I wrote a scathing report entitled "The Corrupt Business of Child Protective Services." Therefore, it is in the best interest of the child to be removed. Best interest, of course, has also been redefined at the child's expense. It has been reported over and over that 6 times as many children die in foster care than in the general public. Once a child is legally kidnapped and placed in official safety, the child is far more likely to suffer abuse, including sexual molestation and/or rape. Case workers and social workers are often guilty of fraud. They withhold and destroy evidence, and they seek wrongly to terminate parental rights while being protected by state immunity. There is a huge bureaucracy made up of judges, court-appointed attorneys, guardian ad litems, social workers, state employees, court investigators, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists, foster parents, adoptive parents, and on, who are looking to the children in state care for their job security. Judges have control over private living arrangements and income of 48.3 million Americans. The United States Census Bureau reported in 2002 that $40 billion in transfer payments were made between households of custody parents and other parents. That money, $40 billion, is under the direction and control of family court judges in environments covered with confidentiality laws that protect the wrong people.
A lawmaker in Oklahoma has been charged with child prostitution. State Senator Ralph Shorty was found in a motel room with a 17-year-old boy. The Republican has also been charged with transporting a minor for prostitution and engaging in prostitution within 1,000 feet of a church.
Police say they found the lawmaker with the teen earlier this month after the boy's father called them. The dad told them his son had a history of drug use and soliciting sex on Craigslist.
Nancy Schaefer out of Georgia, the senator, to get her shut up, the first thing they did, I suspect, was committed voter fraud and got her voted out. That didn't stop her. She continued on to bring out the corruption and expose the true motives of the foster care system, putting kids into the system to get the money. And she touched bases once again on this law that was put on the books back in the 1970s. And there's over $40 billion a year put into the social service foster care system throughout the entire United States. So therefore, it is in the best interest of the people that are in those venues that their paychecks rely on this $40 billion to come in to figure out and find ways to take children out of their homes. She was murdered in her house. Her and her husband were both shot to death in her house. So that brings us to Oklahoma Senator Jonathan Nichols and Arkansas Senator Linda Collins Smith. And these two senators were murdered within 2 weeks of each other. Now, Jonathan Nichols, he was going after pedophiles in Oklahoma. He was trying to bring the issue to light, the sex trafficking in Oklahoma, and was trying to get bills introduced into the Oklahoma state legislation to put pedophiles on death row, to give them the death penalty. Right around the same time, you had one of his cohorts, one of his buddies in the Oklahoma Congress, State Senator Ralph Shorty, being caught and eventually convicted of having sex with a teenage boy. Well, obviously, Jonathan Nichols' laws that he wanted to put on the books would have ultimately ended this guy up on death row. So I think that hit home with a lot of people in the state and congressional seats of the state of Oklahoma. Number one, knowing that why would they want somebody out there putting these type of laws on the books when they could be the recipient of those laws. He also was working with Linda Collins Smith over in Arkansas. It was a two-tiered joint effort to bring out the sex trafficking in the United States and the corruption in the foster care system. But our third senator from Arkansas, Linda Collins Smith, that's the senator that I wanted to focus on because her murder has brought out some investigations, and I've gotten the majority of my information on this from Corey's Digs. So if you go out, she actually did 2 reports called the Arkansas Swamp 1 and the Arkansas Swamp 2. And I'm going to give you names, what they did, and what they were arrested for, and what they were convicted of after I explain to you how this whole setup got started about this $27 million and what ultimately got Linda Collins Smith murdered. Now, Linda Collins Smith was already involved into bringing out child trafficking. She wanted to get the Arkansas state government to pay more attention to this. She actually sponsored a bill, which actually got passed. It's the first state in the United States to do this, that truck drivers getting their Class A license, their CDL truck driving license, before they can get that license, they have to take a sex trafficking course online and pass it before they can get their license. So she was heading things in the right direction. However, she stumbled across this issue that there was $27 million being misappropriated through the Department of Human Services, Child Protective Services out there in Arkansas. So how this got set up was after the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, was passed, and that particular facility was expanded. Obama was taking billions of dollars and pumping it into the states to support, on a state level, the Obamacare. So the state of Arkansas expanded their health insurance program, and by doing that, that ended up getting them more funding. Well, some of this funding that they received relied on putting children in foster care. It was a grant, and if they didn't have a certain amount of children in the foster care system every year, their grant, number one, would not be renewed. So that was one motivation in the state of Arkansas to have children in the foster care system and for the state of Arkansas to be full so they would get that money. So she starts investigating this $27 million missing from the foster care system. Come to find out, what they had done was taken the money, and I'll tell you who all they are in a minute, and I'll put names and so forth. What they had done is they had taken $27 million and they had invested it. What they were doing at that point in time was they were taking the dividends and the interest that they were earning off the investments. They were funneling it through bogus corporations, and eventually it was making its way up to the Clinton Foundation. This is what got her murdered, okay? This is what got her killed. There are hitmen out there, folks, will kill you for a whole hell of a lot less than $27 million, I promise you. Now, Linda Collins Smith was found shot to death in her home in Arkansas, and there were questions being asked about her investigation. Third Circuit Court District Judge Harold Irwin, he issued a gag order and sealed the documents of her investigation, so they got something to hide. Because as I'd mentioned earlier, on this $27 million missing, on this second set of books, there were congressmen, senators on the state level, and judges, so just keep that in mind. And the ultimate kicker on Linda Collins Smith's murder was the Friday before she was murdered, she was supposed to go give grand jury testimony into federal court. Let's see if I can't sum this up for you. Preferred Family Health was the organization that was used after the Arkansas Health Organization expanded their health program, getting more money in from the government. They took the $27 million, invested it. They took the investments off of that, and that's what they used to go into and give to lobbying firms. These lobbying firms used that money to go and bribe the lawmakers, which were the senators and congressmen of various states. They bribed the judges, which interpret the law, and the basic enforcers, which is law enforcement, and the ones that carried out the getting of the children into the foster care system, the Child Protective Service, foster care, casework. They were bribing them all. And once they got the system set up and they had the children set up and into the facilities, they were getting more money in. Once they got the money in, they were able to take this money and misappropriate it. The future funds, they took that and they would send that money to various organizations, churches, schools, and nonprofit organizations, kind of trying to launder the money. When that money came through, that's when everybody would start taking little pieces of it off, and it went to this health initiative that was set up by the Clintons, and then from the health initiative, it found its way into the Clinton Foundation. So now here's the details and the people that were involved in this 27 millions, which he found, but it was a whole lot more. Now, the Arkansas Works medical expansion was put into place after Obamacare was passed. And this expanded the behavioral health spending through the Medicaid department, which ultimately is what funds your adult services, your child protective services, your foster care, social services. It's all through the Medicaid program, if you didn't already know that. There was a company called Preferred Family Healthcare, and Preferred Family Healthcare was actually several companies throughout several states put together and formed this one company. The original company was named Alternative Opportunities. It was located in Missouri, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Illinois, and Kansas. And what they did was they put it all together into the Preferred Family Healthcare Program, and with both of these in 2015. And what the Preferred Family Healthcare did was supposed to use the money for development disabilities, for child welfare, the social services, CPS, foster care, medical services, and even employment services. So this all got put together, multi-state organization in 2015. The first person on the list, her name was Marilyn Luan Nolan. She was the chief executive director of Preferred Family Health. She pled guilty to a multi-million-dollar political corruption scheme that involved bribes and campaign contributions for elected public officials in Missouri and Arkansas. She had not been sentenced as of the date of this article. The next person was Keith Noble. He was the chief clinical officer for Preferred Family Health. He was a licensed psychiatrist and certified substance abuse counselor. He pled guilty to one account of concealment of a known felony. He embezzled and stored and misappropriated funds totaling more than $30 million. The number 3, who was found dead over apparent suicide. He got suicided, big time signature of the Clintons. His name was David Haynes. And David Haynes, he served on the board of the Alternative Opportunities previous, which now is the Preferred Family Health. He was the coordinator in merged acquisition activity for the company, and he was the internal auditor. And he actually waived his rights to a grand jury and pled guilty to 2 accounts of embezzlement schemes totaling more than $3 million. He was found dead in his Missouri farm on November of an apparent quote-unquote suicide. So person number 4, Helen Balding. And she was the building director, Preferred Family Health. And she was arrested on 2 felony accounts of Medicaid fraud for allegedly making false statements that caused the Arkansas medical program to overpay Preferred Family Health $2.2 million from January of 2015 to October 2017. She fraudulently billed the insurance program for children in low income in Arkansas. So here's the first instance where they were using the foster care system to pull out money. And the 5th and last person with Preferred Family Health, his name was Milton Russell Crumford. They called him Rusty. Now, he was a former executive and board member of PHP, Preferred Family Health, and ultimately became a Arkansas lobbyist. So he left the company to go out and lobby the Congress and senators of the states of Arkansas and other states to convince them to vote for these bills, turn them into law, which ultimately these bills and laws would have been funneling money fraudulently back into their system. Now, he had several cases on him in several accounts. So through the operation of not one, but 3 of his lobbying firms, the Cranford Coalition, the Capitol Hill Coalition, and Outcomes of Arkansas, he was indicted and pled guilty to 1 account of federal program bribery. He bribed Arkansas elected officials in multi-million-dollar scheme and embezzled millions of dollars from Preferred Family Health. That was case 1. The second case, he was accused of giving kickbacks to a gentleman I'm going to mention a little later. His name's Jonathan Woods, in which they funded $400,000 of state grants to America Works, a company that was Crawford. And the third case, he was arraigned on the murder of Donald Jones to prevent him from testifying about the kickbacks that he was being received. He pled guilty in his role for the bribery schemes, and his sentence is pending. So this guy was a fraudster, a briber, and ultimately a murderer. So what you have here is you have the basic 5 people in this organization that were put into place. You have the chess pieces in place just in the Family Preferred Health. Now you're set up to be able to go out, and the next step is to get the lobbyists to get the congressmen and the senators of the states on board to pass your laws. So that's what we're going to go to for the next set of chess players, is the lobbyist. First lobbyist was Donald Andrew Jones, D.A. Jones. They called him D.A. And he had a hit contract out on him. The hit contract was put out on him to keep him quiet about all the bribes that had taken place. The contract was not fulfilled because the folks that were involved in conspiring for murder for hire to have him killed were arrested. So this investigation ultimately, I think, saved this guy's life. So D.A. Jones was ultimately found guilty on an account of conspiring with Arkansas state legislators and Preferred Financial Health to spend nearly $1 million of your taxpayer money that came through the foster care system on illegal political activity and kickbacks. And the last lobbyist was Eddie Wayne Cooper, and he was a 3-time Democrat state senator there in Arkansas. He turned to be a registered lobbyist, so they got someone from Preferred Family Health out of the executive division. They got an ex-congressman to go out and do the lobbying for them, like I said, to get these laws passed. He pled guilty to one count of conspiracy for embezzlement for more than $4 million, and he himself received $387,000 from a lobbying firm that was also fraudulent money coming from the Medicaid foster care system. So we've established the players that you had put into place for Preferred Family Health, and the corporation where the money was going to be legally pulled in from the federal government. And now you have the lobbyists in place to go out. Now we're going to get into the congressmen, senators, and the judges. And remember, once I finish naming out some of these people, the last people I'm going to be naming, I'm going to tie them directly into the Clinton Foundation. And remember, from this, they found some documents. They found a lot of documents. And they just wasn't able to throw them in the trunk of a car and haul them out either. So stay tuned for that. It's coming. So the first one was an Arkansas state senator. His name was Jeremy Hitchison. And he was not only was a current state senator out in Arkansas, he was also the chairman of the state Senate Judicial Committee. But however, he is also an attorney, and he had been retained by Preferred Family Health. He's been on a 12-count indictment for devising a scheme to steal money and campaign contributions and falsifying campaign finance reports and tax filings. 12-count indictment. Then you have former Arkansas Senator Henry Wilkins, who was in State Senate District 5, and he was also represented the State House District Representative before he became a senator, and ultimately was a former county judge from Jefferson County, Arkansas. So here's your judge. Now, old Wilkins was pretty busy. He pled guilty to conspiracy to commit offenses against the United States. He accepted over $80,000 in bribes in exchange for, listen to this now, influencing Arkansas state legislation and transactions, including steering approximately $245,000 in Arkansas General Improvement Funds to his conspirators to devise a scheme to conceal the bribe payments and donations to a church. It was called the St. James United Methodist Church in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. And these churches, some of these other organizations, were the organizations that they ultimately took this money that they were getting and funneled it through. I will tell you how they took that. They took their little piece of the pie, moved it over to the bogus Clinton Medical Organization, and it went straight back into the Clinton Foundation. Here we have another senator, former state senator, Arkansas state senator, Jake Files. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison for orchestrating a scheme to obtain approximately $46,500 in state government funds through fraudulent means, and for obtaining $56,700 in loan proceeds also through fraudulent means. So he was kind of a little player. He was only dealing with about $100,000. Little player. And we have another judge for you. Circuit Court Judge Mike Maggio. He began a 10-year sentence for accepting a bribe in exchange for reducing a negligent verdict against one of these companies that was involved in this scheme organization. So here you have judges being paid off and bribed and influencing these various rulings that's been taking place. You got these lobbyists going out as they're lobbying, they're bribing state Congress people and senators of these various states to vote in their favor so they can get even more money from the system and take this money and funnel it through their bogus corporations. They call them shell, kind of like shell corporations, and they would take the money, give it to these various companies, private schools, churches, and then they would take their little piece of it once all the bribes and so forth were done, and it would go to this bogus Clinton corporation, and we're getting to that next. This is a side note. As they were doing all this investigation, they found another murder for hire. Her name was Stephanie Rogers. She was hiring someone to not only kill Joe Rogers, her current husband, and his ex-wife. So evidently, she must have found that there was a little slap and tickle there between the sheets. The best thing I can say, but it doesn't necessarily say how these folks are tied into all this, but I'm sure they are somehow or some form, or they wouldn't have been mentioned. So anyway, there's a murder for hire there that was uncovered through all this. The next person would be Robin Raventon. Now, Robin Raventon was a former medical integrity director of Department of Health and Human Services. Your foster care CPS folks. Now we're starting to get into bringing it down to how the money was funneled through the foster care system. She was arrested on 2 felony accounts of Medicaid fraud. What she did was she sent emails to the deferred financial health employees and filed fraudulent claims on their behalf through the email system, totaling $2.3 million. Now, the next one was former deputy director of the Arkansas Development of Human Services. His name was Stephen Jones. He was sentenced to 30 months in prison for engaging into a bribery scheme. Basically, what they were doing was they were bribing the foster care people to send the kids to 2 facilities that they were in cahoots with the owner, and were paying them out of their pocket to the foster care people that were pulling the strings on the behalf of the children to go to these 2 particular facilities. And that's how they got caught. So once again, when you get these kids in the foster care, they're going to send them to a mental health facility. Tons of mental health facilities out there where their options got narrowed down real quick when they started going out, putting cash money in their pockets, and they got caught bribing the foster care caseworkers to send the children to their preferred mental health facility. So this one is a big one. His name was Jerry Walsh, and he pled guilty on conspiring to divert over $380,000 from the South Arkansas Youth Service. And what he was doing was he was bribing the Arkansas state senators through lobbying firms to influence the Arkansas officials on the state contracts and which contracts to give to what companies related to the foster care system. Basically, he was putting out the bribe money of $380,000 to the various individuals, so they would give the state contracts to their preferred organizations and their preferred facilities instead of someone else. And the way they got this $380,000 through the system was help from a former probation officer. His name was Philip Carter. And he worked with a local pastor in a church. It doesn't say which church it was. I think it's that Methodist church I mentioned earlier. And they're the ones, they used this Methodist church to funnel this $380,000 through the church. And from there, that's how they were able to get the money, try to legitimately get the money to the Arkansas congressmen and senators to bribe them to give out the state contracts. So then they discover Harold L. Moody. They called him HL. And he was a special events coordinator for the Pulaski County Youth Services special events. So what does a special events coordinator do? He goes out and gets these events going, gets the children out of the foster care system, out of the foster care homes to go out and visit. And this is where you have potential. It doesn't mention it. This is where you have potential for sex trafficking. But what was he convicted of? He was convicted on 2 accounts of receiving child pornography, 3 counts of distributing child pornography, and a single count of conspiring to advertise child pornography. He was also a communications director for the Democratic Party of Arkansas. See how we're starting to tie this pedophile thing in, pornography in, and the sex trafficking in to these foster care homes that I had done my previous podcast on, and he is tied right into the Democrat Party of Arkansas, basically the demon rats. Then we have a lady by the name of Carolyn Cavanace. Carolyn Cavanace was the deputy finance director for Hillary Clinton on her 2008 presidential campaign, and she pled guilty for campaign fraud. So now we have someone that's directly tied into Hillary Clinton's campaign and political campaign that has been convicted of fraud. So the noose is now starting to tighten up and close towards the wildebeest. And finally, the last individual that was caught and charged and convicted was an Arkansas state senator. Her name was Linda Chesterfield. She was on Hillary Clinton's 2016 campaign under the leadership control there in Arkansas. and she received for her political campaign about $18,000 from Preferred Family Healthcare Organization and executives to help her political campaign, which was ultimately this fraudulent money that was supposed to be going to the foster care system. And she also helped them receive not only millions of dollars in state funds, hundreds of thousands in state funds, but millions of money through the Medicaid foster care system. So there you have all the players that they had put in place. As far as the Preferred Family Health Care, they had all the executives there. They had the lobbyists. They ended up getting the senators and the congressmen from various states, and they put all this into play. Once they got the money out through, then they started to facilitate it through various organizations and churches and foster care youth centers to get the money through. And where did all that money go? Well, I'm getting ready to tell you, and I'm getting ready to tell you how many millions of documents that they found in reference to the Clinton Foundation. So Hillary Clinton had created this organization called the Health Matters Initiative. Clinton Health Matters Initiative had over 200 people working in it, and these people that was working for this Clinton Health Matters Initiative, which was a bogus front to funnel money to the Clinton Foundation, had over 200 people working for them from the department, police departments, the governor's office, Department of Health and Human Services. The deputy director of Health and Human Services actually pled guilty to bribery because of his association with this particular organization. And then once the money was taken and funneled through all the different avenues that they had, it would go to this Clinton Health Matters Initiative. And then from there, it would go to the Clinton Foundation. Now, just give you a heads up, if you didn't know, the Clinton Foundation was not formed in the United States where you have a nonprofit organization in the United States. You have to report where all the money comes from. You don't have to do that in Canada. So therefore, when money gets put into the Clinton Foundation, they don't have to report where the money comes from. So think about that one for a minute, using the laws to their favor. What are some of the associations or some of the organizations that are directly tied to this Health Matters Initiative and to the Clinton Foundation? This is just a handful. It was the Mexican Consult out of the University of Arkansas Medical Sciences Center, the Arkansas Development of Health and Department of Education, once again, children. The Little Rock School District, once again, children. Numerous hospitals, schools, and churches, and foundations, too many to mention. But the two that falls into the foster care CPS system is the Pulaski County Youth Services and the Arkansas Department of Human Services and the Department of Health and Youth Services. Not all the money that was brought through, all these millions of dollars, was funneled through just the foster care system, but the foster care CPS system was used in a lot of incidences here. Now, what did all this, these people getting investigated, getting indicted, going to jail, what did that mean for the Clinton Foundation? We have FBI office in Little Rock, Arkansas, and another one out in Utah, and another one in Oklahoma. You got 3 FBI offices with over 200 agents in them. And after all said and done, just in this one instance in Arkansas, and just let you know, folks, this is one of at least 50 setups that the Clintons had out there as far as a stream of income coming in. This is just one, okay? They found 4 million documents. 4 million. That's the number I mentioned to you earlier when I first got started. 4 million documents. It was so many documents. They had to go get a 757 airplane that hauls 230 people, a 757 to haul all the documents that they had gotten and acquired from this Arkansas investigation. And it's been put into a sealed vault by John Huber, who is a U.S. Assistant District Attorney, are the ones that are going through all these documents along with the 200 gigabytes of information that they had on computers on top of the actual physical paper documents. So it's taken a long time, takes a long time to go through that amount of information because you don't want to miss anything, because you never know what one piece of information is going to lead to the next, which is going to lead to the next individual. And that's the way investigations go. You get one and all of a sudden it spokes out. And next thing you know, you got 8 or 10 people or organizations that you need to investigate from that one little piece of information. So it's taken a while. But I can tell you, as sure as I'm sitting here, the Clinton Foundation is over with and the Clintons are going to go down. So let's kind of wrap this thing up here. We started out with dead state senators. that were going after pedophiles and going after the foster care system. They were murdered, voter fraud to be voted out of office. They still didn't shut them up, so they were murdered. And the one that I'm focused on was the state senator out of Arkansas, where she was investigating $27 million on 2 sets of books, which led to all these people in this organization, Deferred Family Health Care, where the money was being brought into through the Medicaid system, funneled through various systems, including the foster care system, going to schools, churches, other organizations, going to this bogus initiative that the Clintons had found up and straight into the Clinton Foundation into their pockets. That's all I have on this particular episode. Once again, we're still in the foster care system. So the next episode for the CPS foster care system is going to focus in on the state of Arizona. And out of checking out several states, it looked like the state of Arizona had the most increase in putting children, taking them out of their homes, putting them into the foster care system. All total, they had 17,000 children plus at one time. And they have some very unique laws on the books, which allows social services, child protective service, caseworkers to literally walk into a house, take a child out of a house without a court order from a judge. And there's going to be a lot more on that. So this right here, we're still into what you would say episode 2 of Pizzagate, which is the whole series of the foster care system. So that's all we have for the day. I want to thank you so much for taking your time to watch my show. Like, share, and leave your comments down in the bottom. See what I can do to improve my show and bring you content that you're interested in. Hit that little notification button when you subscribe so you'll get more of my shows in the future. This has been In the Search for Truth and Justice with yours truly, Wil Kinesche, on The Wil Kinesche Show.
Please subscribe to our backup channels, Net4Truth USA 2 Patriot channel, BitChute.com/net4Truth USA, and drop.space/ Net4Truth USA. We fly so close to the target, we are on our 5th fighter jet. We will be relentless and persistent until the enemies of freedom are defeated. You can support this channel by using the links in the description, but for a $100 donation, I will personally send you a autographed hardcover special edition copy of Land of Childhood's Fears. Also, visit my bookstore at lulu.com/Net4Truth USA. If you are viewing this video on BitChute, you can use the links in the description to support us, or simply click the green $ dot on our video to support this channel. Thank you. Links are in the description section.